Hey, welcome to the Electric Playground. My name is Victor Lucas, and we are now EP Live with a brand new episode for you today, and we've got lots of great content for you. We've got an amazing guest. John Ricciardi is going to be joining me in a little bit to talk about all kinds of stuff that he does at 8.4 as well as Monster Hunter World. Thank you, everybody that has joined us live, or if you are watching EP Live as an archive, that's very, very cool. We're getting all of your feedback and your comments and your nice stuff and your supportive discussions around things that you'd like to see changed or altered. We appreciate all of that. It's very cool that you take the time to show us that you care about the stuff that we do. And obviously, this is a brand new initiative for us. We've done like 6 or 7 episodes of EP Live. We want to see this thing grow and continue to bring in lots of cool people like John, and so we just appreciate all of you. That's why we're going to dedicate this rundown. That's why we're going to dedicate this rundown to every single one of you. Let's get started with your rundown. All right, so the first news that we have today is about Bluehole. They want to make it harder to cheat in Battlegrounds. The developer has announced that they'll soon be rolling out a new anti-cheat measure in the PC version of their Battle Royale shooter. They haven't said exactly how it will detect cheaters, but they say they're currently testing it and are gathering data about its stability. They add that some PCs might experience compatibility issues and crashes when they begin rolling it out. Cheating is obviously a problem in online games, especially one as popular as Battlegrounds. Earlier this week, Bluehole announced that they're cracking down on cheaters, with some estimates putting that number of banned players at more than 100,000. For comparison, the game has sold more than 20 million copies, so 100,000 is only about 0.5% of players, but that's still a lot of people. Bluehole also recently partnered with Chinese law enforcement agencies to arrest about 120 hackers allegedly involved in a cheating scheme in the country, so they're taking this pretty seriously. It's crazy, but you know, when you see a game that's this popular, of course people are going to try to, win at all costs. They have reputation on the line, they have prestige on the line, they have all of the new sort of loots and things that you can pick up as you get better and level up in games like this. We see it time and time again. It sucks. It sucks that people try to worm their way through the right way to play all of this stuff. But we spend so much of our lives in these virtual experiences that it's just going to be a part of it. There's no way to kind of avoid it. There's shady stuff that's going on in the real world, and there's shady stuff that's happening in the online world. Now, I've played a little bit more of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and I can see the hook. I can see why it is so successful. It hasn't fully taken over me yet. I haven't been completely addicted to the experience, probably because I'm not that good. I'm still trying to figure it out. It is absolutely terrifying when you get discovered in that game. Super cool that it's been so successful and it continues to improve and it continues to bring in new people. This is definitely one of the biggest stories that we've seen in games in a long time. Another big story that's in games that's coming back, it's a new Dragon Age game that's officially on the way. Earlier today, BioWare's Mark Dara revealed on Twitter that a new Dragon Age game is currently in development. He says that the project is being developed at BioWare's head office in Edmonton alongside the new science fiction game Anthem, although we won't be seeing the new Dragon Age until Anthem is released. The last big Dragon Age, Inquisition, was released in 2015, but fans have a little bit of reason to be nervous here. BioWare famously dropped the ball with their recent Mass Effect Andromeda, so hopefully they've learned their lessons in time for the new Dragon Age and Anthem, for that matter. And yeah, Dragon Age Andromeda broke a lot of hearts, mine included. I have major faith in BioWare, though. Casey Hudson is back running things over there. There's just a core competency and a core group of passionate people that know what's at stake, know what happened, and they want to resolve all those issues. Anthem was a massive, buzz at E3 last year, and I expect that when the Dragon Age stuff is ready to kind of be revealed to us, it's going to look incredible. And, the depth that these guys and girls and people go to make these games incredible for us is astounding. The Dragon Age games in the past have been phenomenal. I loved Inquisition. I thought that was an incredible game. I can't wait to see what they've got for Dragon Age for us in the future. Now, players everywhere hate loot boxes. That's not news. But apparently, Ubisoft didn't get the memo. Or did they? Ubisoft has announced that their open-world shooter Ghost Recon Wildlands is getting loot boxes, but before you get angry, Ubisoft says that those loot boxes will only give players access to cosmetic items and will not give you anything that affects your actual character progression or how well you play. Other games with cosmetic-only loot boxes have avoided the pay-to-win controversy that has plagued many games, including Star Wars Battlefront 2, and as we all know, that game did things differently by having loot box rewards that could be used to improve your performance, which incurred the wrath of players everywhere. The cosmetic loot boxes that will hit Ghost Recon Wildlands in a new update are due out before the end of the month. Yeah, this loot box stuff it's just a black cloud hanging over the video game industry. I think that anybody that's entering into the loot box space in the AAA, kind of category with games that cost so much money has got to tread very, very, very carefully. My thought on it is that you shouldn't have to educate your players on how to not get screwed. They shouldn't be thinking like that. They should just say, look, here's the price, here's the value, and you're just going to have a great time and you're going to want to keep staying. Now, if you're buying new content, if you're buying actual levels or characters or costumes or things that sort of, if you're paying for that, that's one thing. But the idea of dropping cash for maybe something's going to be awesome, it's really scary, and it's been so twisted and kind of broken already that it's going to be very hard, I think, in 2018 for publishers to drop that kind of information and not get roasted. And I expect that a lot of Ghost Recon Wildlands players are going to be, a little bit pissed off that this is happening at all. But we'll see. Time will tell. That game has been a big surprise. It's got a huge, huge following out there. Now we're going to move on to another Ubisoft story. Ubisoft has announced Sam. Now this is a voice-controlled personal gaming assistant similar to Siri, Alexa, and Cortana. It works on iOS and Android devices through the Ubisoft Club app and allows users to get information about the game that they're playing by speaking or typing commands into their phones. For example, if you're struggling in an online match, Sam can give you real-time tips about what you can do to play better. You can also use Sam to access your game library, chat with players, and explore other Ubisoft titles, which seems like a clever way for Ubisoft to sell you other games. Right now, Sam is only available in Canada, and it also only works in English, which seems ironic given that it was developed at the French-speaking Ubisoft Montreal office. A global launch will follow later this year. The spot that they put together around this is a little bit cheeseball. One of the things that kind of rubs me the wrong way right away is that the voice just doesn't sound contemporary. It doesn't sound like 2018 speech recognition robot voice. It sounds a little too, I am Sam, it is good to meet you. And I hope that Ubisoft is going to tweak that and make it a little clearer, a little cooler. And I worry so much about all of these notifications that we get in all of our lives. And we're just adding to that pile. All of these somewhat invasive technologies that are constantly pinging you with new things. Do this, do that, do that. This person wants to get you. Now, obviously, gaming is a huge social environment and people want to play together and they want to schedule things, and we are scattered across a multitude of apps. Every publisher out there is trying to lock in as many people as they can in their community, so it makes sense from a financial standpoint. I don't know personally how much I'm going to be using Sam. I'm certainly curious to test it out. It looks like another app in the gaming space that will be on my phone that I won't use that often right now, if I have to be honest. But when I can check it out, I definitely will, and I'll report back to you guys. Would love to hear what you guys think of Sam in the chat there as well. Now, we're going to move on to movies now. If it looks like a movie isn't good enough for theaters, Netflix will take it. Netflix reportedly wants to pick up the rights to the upcoming third film in the Cloverfield series. I was waiting for this. The movie was filmed back in 2016 and was originally slated to hit theaters next month, but distributor Paramount pulled it a few weeks ago with rumors that it wasn't up to snuff and needed post-production retooling. The Hollywood Reporter claims that Netflix is currently in talks with Paramount to instead release the film exclusively on the streaming service. Netflix and Paramount recently made a similar deal for the new science fiction movie Annihilation, due out next month. Now, this sounds like beggars can't be choosers kind of deal. You know, this is like, all right, well, we'll just dump it over here. Paramount, I think it was Paramount, did something similar with The Little Prince, which was an incredible animated movie that we saw a couple of years ago, where it was supposed to get a U.S. release through them, and it didn't happen. And then Netflix, I think, became a big U.S. partner for that movie. And that was shocking because there was a lot of press and a lot of buzz, and then, meh, they just sort of stopped. And I guess this is the effect of the studios kind of looking at the cost to do the business of distributing these films to all these theaters, and deciding, well, that cost, if we don't spend that, we can, it's basically earned revenue for us if we don't spend that outlay. If we don't expect the either the word of mouth or the critical reception to be positive, or if that many viewers are going to go and actually physically visit a theater, they're going to hold that back, and Netflix is like the perfect alternative. This doesn't bode well for this third Cloverfield movie. If it's not coming to theaters, it feels like, well, it's probably not that great. But I love the last one. What was that? What was the last one called, Blake? 10 Cloverfield Lane. That was awesome, and that was by one of the Totally Rad guys, Danny, and that was fantastic. He directed it. It was fantastic. I really love that movie. So maybe we'll be surprised, and maybe this third Cloverfield movie will be cool. I love the first one as well, too. I thought that was so imaginative. So we'll see. It's clearly Netflix is saying, we can own more of this space if you work with us. Join me, and together we will rule the galaxy. Netflix's Darth Vader. You heard it right here. The new Avengers video game is sounding better and better. Square Enix has announced that their new AAA game based on the Marvel property has recruited two of the game industry's top talents. Uncharted Lost Legacy creative director Sean Eskeg, who recently left Naughty Dog, and Dead Space producer Stephen Barry, formerly of the now closed Visceral Games. On the new Avengers game, they'll serve as creative director and director of production, respectively. And Square Enix has announced that the project, they announced it more than a year ago, but with the exception of a short teaser video, we really don't know anything about this thing. We haven't seen any footage. We haven't even seen the title. We don't know if it's connected to the movies, and we don't know when it's coming out. Now, I've started to bug Marvel, because I know some people over at Marvel and in the games department, and I'm waiting for this with bated breath. I've been watching all these fantastic Marvel movies come out, going, well, is there going to be a game? Are you guys gonna? You've done 20 of these movies. Is there a game coming? And we've seen the Lego ones, just like boom, boom, pew, pew. They keep coming out with good ones. But it's time for a AAA experience. And I feel like Spider-Man, which we're going to be talking about probably every day, until it comes out and probably every day after it comes out, is sort of opening the idea that AAA for Marvel properties is going to happen. So I'm excited about this. I love Crystal Dynamics. Little side note, little side story here. Crystal Dynamics used to be a publisher in the 90s. They were the first company that sent Electric Playground a review copy. They sent us Samurai Showdown 3 for the 3DO system, and it was awesome. I sent them an email. Hi, yeah, we just started. We've got our website. We're going to be a TV show one day. Will you send us a copy of your game? And they sent it, and we reviewed it. And I've loved them ever since, but I've loved them every time I've gone to go visit them. They're just a passionate group of game developers. Amy Hennig was there, and she brings back fond memories. I am so psyched to see, and of course I've loved what they've done recently with Tomb Raider, so psyched though to see what they've got cooking for Avengers, and I hope that's not the end. I hope it's not all like, this has to make mega millions of dollars and then we can, you know, get other Marvel games out there. I hope it's not like that. I hope they have the Avengers, then they've got a new Captain America, then they've got a new Thor for us, a new Iron Man. Like, I really hope that there's a plan here, and I'll be bugging the Marvel Games people on EP Live when they'll talk to me. But I'll keep pinging them, okay? And we'll find out more about this Avengers video game. Are you guys excited about this? We can chat about that a little bit later in the show. We've got Let's Play and Chat today, and since we started talking about loot boxes, and since I still kind of love the game, I still love playing it, it's Star Wars Battlefront 2 today. So you guys can tell me in the chat how much you hate Star Wars Battlefront 2 later on in the show. But right now, we are going to take a look at this day in everything cool. Welcome to this day at Everything Cool for January 24th. Yes, it was released not long ago, January 24th, 2017, but that doesn't make the launch of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard any less cool or significant. A first-person survival horror game that was fully playable in virtual reality was an incredibly bold choice for Capcom and its developers, and wow, did they succeed. Stripped down, incredibly well made, and utterly terrifying, Resident Evil 7 was a stupendous return to form for the long-running franchise. Sega's wonderful Crazy Taxi was released on the Dreamcast on this day in the year 2000 and instantly became a classic for the console. Featuring frantic passengers prepared to endure all manner of vehicular cruelty in order to make it to their destination on time, as well as crowded city streets bursting with color, the game was a joy to play and to watch. Already a huge success in the arcade, the extra modes and the super fun characters, the expanded streets of San Francisco, and that killer music all ensured that Crazy Taxi was a must-buy for the Dreamcast and cemented the game as one that will be remembered by gamers and Sega fans forever.
Crazy Taxi!
In 1986, on January 24th, Voyager 2 flew by Uranus and discovered 10 new moons of the planet's 27 total known satellites. Uranus is the third largest planet in our solar system, is sometimes classified as an ice giant, and its moons, particularly Miranda, offer up a violent collage of impact craters and intense geologic activity. NASA is still proposing future exploratory missions to Uranus, but until then, Voyager 2's flyby in 1986 is the closest we've come. Okay. All right, we're going to take you to space some days. We're going to talk about all kinds of games and movies and things that came out on specific days. We did something very different for today's episode. Normally, this would be the time that I'm patched in live with somebody and we're having a live conversation. And we are going to try our best to do that as often as we possibly can. But sometimes people live in a time zone that's very far away. That was the case and is the case with John Ricciardi, who lives in Tokyo. He agreed to get up very early in the morning this morning, but it was yesterday for us, to have this conversation about his career and Monster Hunter World. Let's take a look. My guest today is video game industry veteran John Ricciardi, who I've known for many, many years. I think he came up to me and said, "You just interviewed Shigeru Miyamoto. That was really cool." I think at like E3 1996
like the first E3.
or the first E3. Yes, it was very cool. But he is the creative director of and co-founder of 8-4, which is based in Tokyo, Japan. They've worked on localizations for some of your favorite games, like some Fire Emblems, a couple of the Niers. Nier Automata was one of the best games last year. Lots of the Monster Hunter series, and we're going to be talking about that, including Monster Hunter 3 and Ultimate, and Monster Hunter 4, and now Monster Hunter World, which is about to be unleashed upon us. He worked at EGM and also the Nintendo official magazine in UK, and he is the co-host of the very famous and very good 8-4 podcast. John Ricciardi, it is wonderful to have you on Electric Playground. Have you ever been on our show before?
I don't think I have. It's great to be here. We've known each other for so long.
You might
like
be
you
the
said,
last
I
person
think
in
the
the
first
video
E3.
game. You might be the last person in the video game industry who hasn't been on EP, and now you're here. You're in. You're on.
My time has come. I finally made it. It took so long, but I made it.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me, man. It's great to be on.
We did meet at the very first E3, didn't we?
We did. I just remember my memories of the first E3 are like, the size and spectacle of it all, Polygon Man, and you. It's like that's the things that go back to me. It's like, okay, yeah, those are the like key events that happened to me because I wasn't really in the industry yet. I was like just starting out. I had gone there as like a. Say that again.
I'm so flattered. That's incredible. That's so sweet.
Yeah, I was out there as like an EB employee, like everybody else used to do. We would go to like the show, and like that was kind of where I first like, oh wow, this is amazing. And the next year I joined EGM, and so
that's amazing. Well, I mean, we were still dreaming at E3 95. We didn't have a show on the air. We had our website, and I was just out collecting interviews. That was a crazy thing. Like Michael Jackson was at the Sony party where we got our Polygon Man T-shirts.
That's right.
I ended up turning my hair into Polygon Man, which is weird. And then
nice.
I met George Lucas at the very first E3. I ran after him and gave him my business card. But I met everybody. And what's amazing about this business is that no one leaves it If you know, a few people do, but if you really
Sure.
love it, you find your way in, and you sort of roll with what comes, and lots of changes happen, and companies close down, and games get canceled, and magazines fold, and all kinds. But you kind of roll, and you find your path in it, and you are one of those people that happened for you a little bit, but you kind of said, look, there's a need for this. We need better translated work, because you're a fan and you could tell that this content wasn't quite up to snuff, and you went out there to like solve some things, didn't you?
Yeah, like selfishly, you know, a lot of what that was in the beginning was kind of for me personally as a gamer is like, well, how, you know, this is, what am I going to do in this industry? I'm finally getting out of media. I was in media for like 5-6 years, whatever it was, and it's like, tried a couple different things, and it's like, well, I still want to work on games, but I'm not sure like I'm necessarily going to be like a game creator, so maybe I can put my one skill to use, which was writing. And it's like, well, the writing in games is pretty bad in localized games back then, and it was like, well, maybe we can, you know, combine the contacts that I made from over the years from being in the media with writing ability and see what we could do. And that's kind of how we got into localization in the beginning.
How much, I mean, you relocated to Tokyo. How, had you already been speaking Japanese quite a bit before you did all of that, or did you just sort of say, I'm going to learn this, let's go?
Just a little bit. When I was, I've told this story on Twitter and stuff before, but when I was a big Dragon Warrior fan back in the day.
Nice.
Super nerd. And when the 5th one came out, it wasn't in English. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to import it. It's going to be my first game I import from Japan. I bought a couple of like Japanese dictionaries and like taped the like, you know, alphabet stuff to my desk or at home. And I basically like forced myself to learn the hiragana and katakana, like the basic Japanese alphabets. And that was what sort of started the little snowball that led into me becoming interested in Japan, eventually moving here. I came here for just 1 year originally, but now it's been 17. So I've become a lifer over the course of it. And it's mostly because of video games.
That's incredible. So did you, when you went that first time, did you actually come back after a year, or did you just end up staying?
I just ended up staying. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I came out during the, I don't know if some of your older viewers might remember the .com like bubble of 2000, which is basically like all these internet companies sprouted up, and we were working for a site called gamers.com, which was one of those. And part of my deal for leaving like the, you know, the safe walls of EGM to go to gamers.com was I wanted to go to Japan, and they promised to send me after a year. And so if I helped them build their site. So I did that, and then I left. And then like 2 months after I got to Japan, they and most of the other .coms at the time went belly up. And so I was like, oh, well, I got here. I might as well make the most of it. And so I had to kind of start over from scratch. But I ended up, you know, staying. And yeah, like I said, now it's many, many years later. So
what I've kind of recognized with the Japanese developers that I've interviewed and met over the years is that they are very open to this idea of collaboration. And they obviously, you know, want to appeal to more Western gamers and you know, find a way to grow their audience. Did you find that as a, you know, a young entrepreneur? Was that something that you got back from these game designers and game developers, or did they put you through the ringer a little bit?
Well, a little bit of both. I mean, I still remember like the first trips I came out here. So I was coming here 3 or 4 times a year before I moved here for EGM back in the day. Yep. And I still remember like being this like wide-eyed, you know, I don't know, 20-year-old or whatever, and like sitting at a table. We went to this Konami press event in '97. I'll never forget this. Like sitting at a table, and like the guy right across from me, just super unassuming dude, you know, very humble and quiet. And like 2 or 3 hours into the conversation, the topic comes up of what he worked on, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this is the guy who made Contra." And I just remember like my eyes blowing wide because like, you know, you would think this is some rock to kids like us back in the day. Those Konami games were like insane. Like this was some rock star. No, he's just super humble, very friendly, totally willing to talk and become friends. And that was something that struck me about the Japanese game industry is like even the biggest creators are mostly super humble and friendly. And we've ended up becoming really good friends with a lot of these guys who were like heroes when we were younger.
That's awesome.
So in that sense, it was easier to kind of I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not super easy to start a company in Japan and all that. I have a really great partner, Hiroko, who's Japanese, and she's you know, been a big part of why we've become, you know, kind of trusted and stuff in Japan. But like getting started out here, a lot of that was just like building these relationships with these developers and becoming friends with them, and them understanding our enthusiasm and how much we care about games and everything. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of what, you know, made it comfortable to work in the industry here. The industry is so small and warm and just awesome.
What was the first game that you guys got contracted to help out on at 8.4?
It was actually Mario Tennis for Game Boy Advance.
Amazing. Nintendo has got to be one of the toughest companies to kind of gain that trust with, I guess, in a way, right? But that's not a bad game to start. That's amazing.
No, it was amazing. And that, of course, that was because of, we had already been friends with all those guys. Bill and who was, one of the main guys at the Treehouse back then. It was like, Bill Trinan was a really good friend of ours from our media days. And so, when you've already got the relationship built and the trust, it's much easier to break down the initial barrier of like working together. It's like, well, he actually approached us before we had he knew we were setting up the company, but it wasn't set up yet. So it was like, how can we find a way to get you guys to work on this right now, even though your company's not going to be ready for like 3 more months? And we were like, oh my God. So we had to scramble to get 8.4 up and running, but we did, and it was awesome.
That's great. That is amazing. Yeah. Hey, now you guys have been running for a long time, and I listed off some of the titles that you've worked on. Was there, tell me maybe one of the games that you're proudest of, or a moment in your company's history where you went, oh my God, I can't believe we get to work on this?
That's happened so many times, and I'm so grateful for it. But I would say, we get something that's similar to working in the media, as you probably know, is like, when you get the feedback from users or players about, your work, like when we wrote at EGM back in the day, and we would get letters from fans and stuff who read our reviews and were like, everybody had their favorite. And some people would be like, you're the guy whose tastes align with mine the most. I really like you, blah, blah, blah. That's like very empowering. Like it fuels me to want to do more. It's the greatest feeling, like to be able to make, you're a player, a gamer who loves video games, and you want to help other people. And if you can make them feel good, it's like, to me, that's the best thing. And so I noticed you get the same thing with our localizations. Like a lot of times when you do a good localization, nobody really talks about it. Reviewers and stuff will talk more about the bad ones.
Yeah.
But when you do one that like hits home so much that you're hearing about it in reviews and people are complimenting on you, that's like the greatest thing. And it's not like there's some pride involved, but it's not like, oh, look at us, we're awesome. It's more like, I'm so happy we were able to kind of deliver the developers like intended, response to the players. Like this, when he made this game in Japan, he wanted the player to feel this. And like when we're hearing that from players and their tweets and their emails and stuff like that, that's like the best thing. And we've gotten that on a number of games over the year. The most recent one is Nier Automata from last year, or Automata, depending on how you pronounce it. Yeah. And that's an amazing game with a deep story. And we've gotten tons of first of all, it's just an honor to be involved with that series. We worked on the original Nier as well. Yoko-san is a good friend of ours, the director. And but that game really resonated with a lot of people. Yeah. And I feel strongly that like it needed a good localization. Like a game like that with those themes and that kind of depth to the story. 100%. If the localization fails and the voice acting is no good, it's just gonna rip you right out of it. Yeah. So I'm particularly proud of that one. But we also worked on so my former business partner Mark McDonald, also formerly of EGM, was the main writer on Metal Gear Rising. And I think Mark actually coined I'm not going to say it, but America's current president's terrible slogan was actually used in that game like a few years before by the evil senator in the last boss. And like we wrote that, and like we worked on that and got a lot of good feedback from that game. And of course the Monster Hunter games are also like we helped kind of revitalize the localizations in that series starting from Try. And so
awesome.
Yeah, there's been a number of games that were particularly exciting to work on, but
fantastic.
It never stops getting exciting.
So I wanted to talk about Monster Hunter. Obviously, it's a big topic this week. Monster Hunter World is a big deal. Yes. I've followed this series along. I can't profess to be a super fan of the franchise. I think mostly because I don't have the time to be. I can, give my thoughts about these games and play them until I know what I feel about them, but they require a commitment. But I feel like World, from my observations, could be a change, could be one of those games that appeals to even the broadest audience that Monster Hunter ever has. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was kind of the hope. So the hope has always been for Monster Hunter fans like myself who've been with the series forever, has always been, I think, for it to be on a platform that I mean, it's great that it was on 3DS and they finally added online with the last couple of entries. But I mean, we've talked about it on our podcast for years. We've really wanted it to be like on a next gen console on your big screen. It's you're fighting these huge monsters all the time. It's such a spectacle, like to play this game. Like you want to see it on a giant screen, not on your tiny handheld.
Yeah.
And so for it to finally go, quote unquote next gen, and to be kind of they've evolved the series to a degree now, I feel like, where they're trying to make it more user friendly for newcomers. It's still, the barrier to entry is still pretty high, I feel like. It's definitely improved in this one, but it's not going to be a game that anybody can pick up and play. This is a hardcore game for sure. But I do think that this is probably the best shot they've taken yet at getting it into like a wider audience for sure.
One thing I've noticed right away that struck me, because one of the things that, I mean, we've been educated with games like Skyrim and now Breath of the Wild and stuff like that to kind of get familiar with huge, vast areas that are kind of open world and stretch everywhere. When you play a Monster Hunter game, it hints at that, but in the previous ones, there were lots of loading bits between areas. And in this one, that's all seamless. And that makes, for me, as someone that knows a little about Monster Hunter, but not all of the minutiae, that seems to correlate a lot more with the other types of open world action experiences and RPG experiences that I'm playing these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they call it world for a reason, right? I think one of the big things they did here was they did, I've been playing, if there's a reason I'm bleary-eyed, it's because I was up till 3 a.m. last night playing again. We've been playing all week. We got early copies, and they basically remove the loading between scenes. So now you have a little bit of loading, like a little more loading before each quest. But then once you're in and moving about. There's fast travel between different camps on the quest. They've made it much more, feel much more like a giant world. It always was a giant world, but as you said, like because of the loading and things, it didn't feel that way. And so in that sense, it definitely feels more like sprawling and gigantic and kind of alive. And that's something that was always, I think, one of the strong points of the series is like feeling like you're lost in this giant, ancient world or whatever. And they've done a good job of capturing that with World.
Awesome. And I would imagine the core ideas of harvesting the materials that are out there and, hunting these monsters and taking out the, the bits that you can use and the bits that you can cook. A lot of the core hooks are all the same.
They're all the same, but they're streamlined in a good way, mostly.
Yeah.
That this is one of the best things about this that they've done is they've made gathering much easier. Like in the previous games, you'd have to go to like a gathering point and, hit the button. Okay, pause animation. Hit the button again. Pause animation. It's kind of this process, and it took a lot of time. And now, as you're running through the world, stuff will just pop up, and you'll just tap the O button while you're running. You don't even stop, and you just grab it.
Okay.
And mining no longer is this complicated thing where you have to like manage your pickaxe inventory and stuff. Like you have infinite pickaxes. You just go to up a mining spot, hit it a few times, you've got your stuff, you go.
Wow.
They've made the sort of the moment to moment stuff that was taking forever in the previous games is all much more streamlined now.
Is that
which is good because that's not.
Is that based on feedback? Is that based on, because this has had a long, success story for Capcom. But is this based on people saying, "Look, we want to get into it," or is this the team saying it's time to modernize this for a different crowd, or a bit of both?
I would imagine it's probably more of the latter. I should say, like, even though we did actually work on the localization of this game too in partnership with Capcom, but I don't speak for the team, so I don't know exactly what they were thinking on this stuff. But I do feel like, the impression that I've gotten from this game from the start is, hey, we want to make a Monster Hunter that's going to appeal worldwide, not just in Japan. Japan has already got it. Japan loves it.
Yep.
And that's fine. But we wanted to make a game. They wanted to make a game that is going to appeal outside. And so I think a lot of the streamlining, part of it is just, hey, games have become more modern and streamlined over the years. There's that. But then part of it is also like, hey, how do we make this more accessible to a wider audience? How do we, a lot of people would play Monster Hunter and then get tired of it or give up on it very quickly because like, oh, this is just too much information, too much going on. So I think it's a matter of like, how do we remove those little things that aren't, it's not a big deal if you're just tapping a button to gather instead of like standing there for a minute. So like, how do we remove these things and make it easier for players to play without getting turned away right away?
Yeah.
And you feel that a lot in the game.
How did that change your job at 8.4? Was the information also streamlined? I mean, it must be. Is it bigger? Is the game bigger than It sounds like it's bigger.
I mean, it feels bigger. It seems, it's hard to say. Like, I couldn't say how long it was or anything, but I mean, it feels like a proper Monster Hunter for sure.
Yeah.
The difference for us, I think, is that, and this has been happening in a lot of games we work on, is that, this is the first time that it's coming out in the same release date worldwide. So
That's
Japan
huge.
and the West, everyone's getting it at the same time, which means, the localization people, both us and at Capcom have to work on stuff a lot earlier. Like the perfect localization scenario, the game is done, they hand it to you on a platter, and you're like, okay, leave us in a room for a couple of months and we're going to come back with this like perfect, dish. But in this case, it's like, okay, we've barely got the ingredients and started cooking, and you got to start working on the game already. And it's like, okay, I don't even know what's going on. Like, it's a lot more of a challenge in that sense to like, polish things, because you don't always know how things are going to go. Or you might, those guys did some really great voice recording for this game over at Capcom, but like, who knows? Like, they were working on it and things could change after voices have been recorded. And then it's like, do you go back and re-record them? Do you do, a lot of kind of like being able to react and move quickly while working on the game, which is different from the past. And that was kind of the major, I think, interesting challenge of working on this game.
These games are cool and they're fun. And I'm wondering if, based on your experience now, being so close to this, is this the one that you say, if you've had any interest or this has piqued your curiosity, this is the one to jump in with?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of always like that because they're always making it a little more accessible. But this time, I mean, we're playing it now a lot. Like, we first got involved with the series on Monster Hunter Tri, and we've jokingly talked about the story about how we would work on the game like 12-hour days. It was a crazy schedule, and then we would go home and play the game to relieve stress. They're like, we're gonna go play, like it's like weird self-punishment. The couple of entries after that, of course we played them all a lot, but we didn't get as crazy into it. It's like, okay, well, we've kind of done this before, we've played it, we worked on it, we already know how it ends, like, so blah blah. But with this one, it's back to like crazy excitement. Like, we've got our chat room on our phone, and it's like, okay, what time are we meeting up tonight, and we're gonna play, and we're all I bought a new headset just so I can do better voice chat without that thing that comes with the PS4 in my ear, and like, we're into it now. And I think that's a sign. Like, we're not just doing this because we have to, we're doing it because we really want to.
Why did Monster Hunter make such a huge dent in Japan? Why was it such a huge hit?
It was a social phenomenon here, I think, partly because it got big on the PSP, and big part of that is we have this interesting level of social gaming here that kicked off that never really happened in the West, I think, partly because of Japan's size, contracted, like, it's a small country. School students gather together and play together outside in person a lot. And what happened is, I think, just it became like the social thing where like everybody gathered together with their PSPs afterwards and played together. And it's like couch co-op or anything. It's much more fun when you're in the same room as your friends playing together and hunting, and you can coordinate without having to like chat on text or whatever. And at that time, the mobile games are everything in Japan now.
Yeah.
They're obviously a huge market here. And it was like right before that. So it was like, that was like the boom that preceded the mobile boom. But it was kind of the same thing. The reason for it is portability, right? Like, not to get too far into it, but like Japanese, especially in big cities like Tokyo, we don't have huge apartments.
Yeah.
Like my apartment here is probably like the size of your living room or something. And it's like, people are outside more than they're inside. And so that's why portable gaming and mobile gaming is a bigger deal. A lot of commuting, a lot of being on trains. And so I think that also helped feed into the Monster Hunter frenzy. It's like, here's this fun co-op game that we can play together anytime, doesn't cost anything. We can meet outside and be social. We're not being antisocial like in our homes or whatever. And like, that was sort of what made it a huge thing here.
That's awesome. Is it weird then to play Monster Hunter World on your huge TV? And does it feel like you're part of the whole thing, or does it feel like you're entering a new game in a way?
Well, I'm still I mean, as much as I love Japanese games, I think I'm still, in that sense, I'm wired to be like a Western gamer at heart. Like, I love playing online. And so for me, this is great. Like, it's awesome to be able to go home and, get on chat. We have our, like I said, we have like we'll be on Discord, or we'll be on our PlayStation party or whatever. And like, we're all just basically playing online games the way anybody would, the way you'd play Destiny or whatever. To me, it's great. Like, that's what I always wanted. It's nice to be in the same room, but I don't need to be. So.
That's awesome. So when you work on a game like Monster Hunter, are you strictly focused on converting the Japanese to English, or is there anything going back the other way? Do you kind of do you work with other people that are bringing a game from North America into Japan as well, or can you go back and forth that way?
We do other games from English into Japanese. Yeah, like we're the ones who do like all the Japanese versions of like Supercell's games, so like Clash of Clans and Clash Royale and all those. Or we bring some indie games to Japan. We did like Shovel Knight in Japan, and we did Undertale. Wow. That was like a big thing last year. But that's like that, we wouldn't on Monster Hunter, for example, it's all coming from Japan to English. We don't really do anything the other way around because there's nothing to do. Yeah, but we do other games in that sense. Yeah.
And are you guys? I mean, you're clearly avid players, and you're sort of in touch with all kinds of stuff, and you've got a history, critiquing these things. Have you encountered any situations where you've given feedback and altered some game design choices or anything like that?
Yeah, when the developers are open to it, we love to, get our comments in. I mean, we try to be, we understand the realities of game development, so we're not like, hey, let us remake your game or whatever. But a lot of times there are little things you can do to enhance the experience for, I was going to say Western gamers, but I shouldn't say that. I mean, it's enhancing it for anyone, really. But like in our case, a lot of times we're bringing these Japanese games to America, and it's like, there are a couple of times where we were able to, I remember one game in particular, I think it was a game not many people played, Glory of Heracles for the DS, I think it was, from Nintendo. The battles were really slow in the Japanese version, and we talked to the dev team, and we're like, if you could speed these up, like times it by 3 or something, make the speed like 3 times as fast as Japanese, it's going to make the game a lot more playable. And they actually were like, you know what, you're right, and they did it. And like stuff like that is when we have a chance to do that, it's really awesome.
That's amazing.
But it depends on the development team, being willing to listen, having the time. Sometimes they don't have the time or the budget, and that's just the reality, and that's fine. But
yeah. You've been in this business for a long time now. How much have you seen sort of change? And you've been in Tokyo now for a long time too. How much have you seen the gaming industry change out there?
I think it's in a good place now. Actually, this last year was incredible. Like, there were so many great games from Japan.
Absolutely.
We had Yakuza and Persona and Nier and all this awesome stuff coming out, Zelda, and everybody's kind of firing on all cylinders. And like, there was that dark age for a little while where, like Inafune-san and some of the other people were like preaching doom and gloom for Japan. But I always felt that it was going to, I never felt like Japan creativity was dead. I just felt like there was a lack of like technology understanding for a while that kind of hurt, but I feel like they've kind of caught back up, either on their own or with the with the help of like game engines like Unreal and such. A lot of people are using Unreal these days in Japan.
Yeah.
I feel like the industry in here, in Japan was like really high. That's why we all were like, excited about Japanese games back in the day. It sort of dipped down for a while in like the PS3 era, but I feel like it's back now, and we're maybe in like the most exciting time ever.
We're also seeing, like these superstar Japanese developers, like Koji Igarashi, going out there and kickstarting stuff and getting their own ideas, and they're also using kind of retro styles and things that have supposedly passed us by. But I feel like there's an appetite and there's an understanding of the the total reach of games. They don't necessarily all have to be AAA Unreal titles these days.
Yeah, man, the whole indie boom that happened over the last 5-6 years or whatever it's been has been, I think, really great for the industry in general because of that. Like, it's brought back lots of different kinds of genres. A lot of people who grew up playing those games when they were kids are now adults making their own games. So it makes sense that we're going to go back and start seeing more of those kind of games in the stuff that people make today. And a lot of those kids were inspired by Japanese games, right?
Yeah.
And so you see a lot of indie games that are trying new things. New things based on like old ideas, which is great. And also, I think, Japanese developers have for years were making those kind of games. So, I mean, play to your strengths. If you're, I don't want a Japanese developer necessarily to make some like, first person like bro shooter or whatever, because that's not what they were good at.
Yeah.
Like I love that Iga's making a game basically similar to a series that he was super famous for. Like, definitely fill that gap. Like, we want those kind of games.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have, you're part of a group of friends that puts on a special night out there for game developers, right? Where it's called Otaku
Yes.
Nights?
Otaru, yeah.
Otaku. How often do you have those?
We have it once a week, actually. Otaru is a thing that we've been doing since 2003 now.
Yeah.
Every week we basically just meet up at the same kind of rundown little izakaya, like this little Japanese, watering hole, I guess you'd call it. And we just, drink and eat and hang out with other people who either work in games or enjoy games. Yeah. It's kind of a community building thing that we started a while ago.
Who shows up to something like Otaru?
Oh, I mean, we have different people. That's the nice thing. We were talking about this a little bit offline earlier, but like, the nice thing about being in Tokyo is people come through all the time from, to visit. A lot of game industry friends will pass through Tokyo because it makes sense that a lot of people are interested in Japan if they're in games. And we get game developers there all the time. I mean, back in the day, it was like, Mark Cerny would be there one week, or, just a couple of weeks ago, Ian Dallas was there, the guy who made Edith Finch, and David O'Reilly, the creator of everything, was in town a couple of weeks ago. Like, it's different people every week, but there's always somebody coming through. There's our local group and the regulars or whatever. And then there's always like special guests flying through, as we call them, who are, industry people. And it's great because we get to kind of, we get to build a community in Tokyo of game developers and people who want to become game developers, but then they also get to kind of mingle with the people who are actually making the games as well. And to me, that's everything. I love that. That's like, it's something we just do on the side for fun. There's no money involved or anything, but it's just something that like kind of we can use to kind of fuel our love of games.
That's awesome. Now, you have been privileged to work with some of your heroes in Japan and some real industry legends. And I'm wondering if there's someone that you feel comfortable enough to tell us a story of somebody that really surprised you, that you got to know. Maybe it's Mr. Miyamoto or Hideo Kojima or Suda51, or that you got to know them and they surprised you about in some way.
Well, I don't. That is good. You ask good questions. You caught me off guard here. I don't. Everybody surprises me in the sense that I'm just this. I'm like 42 now, but I'm still this like wide-eyed 18-year-old in my head. Like, I love video games the same way I did 20 years ago. And so, like I was saying earlier, every time I meet one of these like industry, heroes of mine, it's always like just this amazing experience, and I always just want to do my best to make them feel comfortable and not feel like I'm some fanboy freaking out over them. But I've Eiji Aonuma, the producer of Zelda, we met him back at a Ziff Davis party at E3 in like a long time ago. Bill Trinan brought him to one of our EGM parties back in the day, and of course we're like, oh, it's a Zelda producer, we want to meet him. But I remember chatting with him there. This is like 12, 13 years ago or something, and being like, hey, like, I loved Majora's Mask. It was awesome. Like, we talked about it. And he was like, oh, really? Like, at the time, he was so shocked that people loved that game because he loved it too. Yeah. And we became friends over that. And we've been friends for years. And, like, we'll see him now whenever we go to Kyoto. Like, sometimes we'll go drinking together or hang out together. And, like, to me, those kind of moments are so special that these people who, like, I admire so much are just our friends and are just super humble and want to hang with us. And like, I don't have like some surprising, crazy story like about any of these guys. Not that they would want me to tell you anyway. Yeah, but I mean, like, I feel like, it's just so great to be in an industry here where I feel like, even the most esteemed creators are super down to earth and just want to make cool games. It's awesome. Great.
I know that some of the viewers, at least one or two of you out there, are going to be thinking about a crazy dream like yours, about moving to a different country. What would you say to those people that have a dream to do something like that? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Like, the best thing that I could ever say to anyone, games or otherwise, is like, get out of your comfort zone. Like, go live in another country for a year or two and see what the world is like. See what your own home is like from the eyes of other people. Like, just, it's I'm super, super lucky to have lived the life that I've lived so far. I mean, hopefully I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, but I mean, like, it's super, I highly recommend getting out of your comfort zone and go trying new things. A lot of the advice that I give people is like it's the cliched, stuff that everybody says, which is like, work hard, don't give up on your dreams, blah, blah, blah. But it's all true. Like I didn't, and, a little bit of luck is involved too. So you got to get yourself out there. Like I got in this industry from, going to CES in like, I forget which one it was. It was like 95 or something. It was before that E3 where I met you. And, I like remember I like wore a suit. I didn't know what I was doing, and like I just went and like had like
Dude,
some writing
I wore
samples.
A tie to the first E3. I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and like I've worn a suit like maybe 20 times in my life, but that was one of them. And I went there, and I remember I brought like writing. I wrote some reviews or something. I forget. I basically wanted at the time I wanted to write a book. I just wanted to get into games, and I brought writing samples, and I hunted down Wes Nihei, who at the time was the editor-in-chief of GamePro.
Yeah.
Somehow he was willing to talk to me. I forget why, but basically, like, I just like was like, look, dude, like, I just anything. And he gave me a freelance review like 6 months later, and like that little thing managed that from there I could then take that and say, hey, I have a little bit of experience. Can I do some work for you? Can I do this? Can I do that? And that slowly got me in. But like, it wouldn't have happened if I didn't take whatever little money I had and like go to, was it Vegas or Chicago? I forget which one of those CES shows. So you got to get out there. You're not the luck. It's not going to fall on you. You have to actually work for it and try to make it happen. But if you actually try to make it happen and you work hard, I feel like you can do it.
Awesome.
And living in another country, man, especially Japan. If you're into games, Japan's awesome. It's really fun here. Food is amazing, and service is amazing, and people are so nice.
People are
incredible
I love it here. Out there. Yeah, God, you're making me want to go back so bad. So what's next? You've got Monster Hunter World. It's shipping this week. I know you're cooking on new things. Can you tell us, an 8.4 project that's in the works?
What are we working on now? We're always working on a lot of
perhaps.
Stuff. No, I wish. Nothing exciting that we could talk about now, but our projects come in for us, we're constantly working on stuff, but they tend to hit the public in like fits and spurts. Like all of a sudden, like 3 games we worked on over the course of like 2 years will all land in like within 6 weeks or something. And so right now we're in one of those quiet zones where we're doing a lot of stuff, but I think you'll start hearing from us again, probably, later this year, early next. Because we've been doing a lot of stuff into Japanese lately.
Yep.
And so like we put out Undertale in Japan, and we actually developed the PS4 and Vita versions of that, which were released everywhere. And that took up a lot of last year. And now we're working on a couple of big projects, but I think you won't even start to hear about them until later this year, probably. So
awesome.
Things might be a little quiet for a little while, but we'll be back with some cool stuff soon.
Well, I hope you'll be back on EP soon, too. This was wonderful and long overdue, and it was great to see your smiling face on here. I'm so proud of you. You are a trailblazer,
thanks,
and it's you're just a wonderful dude, man, so I'm really, really happy. Can you do me a favor? Can you say, this is John Ricciardi from 8.4, and you're watching Electric Playground in Japanese?
日本の皆さん、8-4のジョンと申します。こちらは Electric Playground という素晴らしい番組だから、ぜひ見てください。
Wasn't that guy amazing? Isn't John Ricciardi just the best? I loved speaking with him, and I am so excited to see how Monster Hunter World has turned out. I can't wait to play the game. Wonderful time. Thank you, John, for joining us. And hard to believe that he hasn't really done this video interview type thing before. He was terrific and gave us all kinds of great insight. And you guys were picking up on all kinds of great stuff in there. Some great observations, Timberwolf, about technology. Absolutely. What a glorious age we live in where I can have an interview with a guy thousands and thousands of miles away like that, who I've really had a fondness for since I first met him in 1995. Incredible dude. Anyways, it's now time to look in our crystal balls with a brand new crystal balls. Somewhere Tommy is... Some snot has come out of his nose. He's laughing about that right now. Okay, it's time to look into our crystal ball singular for a brand new buried treasure. All right, so I'm in New Orleans, but I don't care. I'm going to talk about a game that's set in London. It's called The Getaway. This was a 2002 PlayStation 2 exclusive, developed in London by Team Soho. And my favorite part about this game, which clearly was inspired by the work of Guy Ritchie, when you look at movies like Snatch or Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, you can see that influence and that kind of energy permeating throughout this game. I love the fact that they did a really good job at recreating vast sections of the city of London, which was such a cool idea. And I really hope that Sony, who still owns this brand and still owns this idea, will revisit it somehow. Whether they do a whole remastered thing like they're doing with Shadow of the Colossus, or they make a real sequel with modern day technology, that would be incredible. But in its day, back in 2002, this was still a very impressive game. It's basically like Guy Ritchie directing a Grand Theft Auto experience. It doesn't sort of move or play with the gracefulness of the PlayStation 2 era Grand Theft Auto games. It's still a little bit clunky, but they did some cool things that work to a degree, like removing a lot of the heads-up display and signaling on the car when you're supposed to be turning left and right. And because a lot of the city streets in London kind of look very similar, sometimes you get lost and you get frustrated and get caught by the cops. I also like the fact that they did a kind of a split narrative. You play as an ex-bank robber and you play as a cop, and you're bouncing back and forth, and it's a real tough gangs in London kind of experience. And you do some heinous things, but it was fun, and it was a nice escape, and it was a nice variation on what Rockstar had been doing with Grand Theft Auto. I think The Getaway was super cool. It was ahead of its time, and it's definitely time for Sony to revisit that franchise. The Getaway is an excellent buried treasure. Pretty sure I interviewed some of the devs that worked on this game at Team Soho in London. I'm talking about The Getaway, and it was surreal then to play the game and drive past the Sony PlayStation Team Soho offices when I was playing the Getaway game. Sony, what are you doing? Why are you sitting on that franchise? A new Getaway would be incredible. We want that so much. But let's move over to a movie review, shall we? This is Netflix trying to play in the big leagues with Bright.
Humans have physical tells.
Tells, huh?
Yeah. It's called a face.
Show me the face orc makes when he just shut the fuck up, don't say shit, and just drive to work.
So I finally had a chance to check out Netflix's big deal movie. It's called Bright, and it stars Will Smith and Joel Edgerton. It's directed by David Ayer, who brought us Suicide Squad, and he also brought us End of Watch and Training Day. So this guy has made some really cool movies. And Bright, if you've ever seen the movie Alien Nation about a human cop and an alien cop, you kind of get the sense of what you're talking about here. This is a movie that really fuses the very gritty, realistic tone of being a police officer in somewhat dystopian Los Angeles, which might be a reflection on modern-day civilization, as a matter of fact, where we've got a human cop played by Will Smith, partnered with an orc cop who is played by Joel Edgerton in all kinds of makeup that makes him virtually unrecognizable. And I'm sure that he and his agent are not especially thrilled that they are in this movie. I guess they cash the checks, but you could probably fool anybody if you said Joel Edgerton was in this movie, because it sure doesn't look like Joel Edgerton. Anyways, there's some big friction between Will Smith and Joel Edgerton, and also the rest of the human cops on the police force. Nobody wants this orc around, right? He's part of a race that is looked down upon by the humans. They conquered the orcs many millennia ago, as we're told through the fiction of the film. And this guy, Joel Edgerton, has his teeth filed down to kind of make him sort of even stand out more. He's not wanted by the orcs, he's not wanted by the humans, so he's very tense there. And the movie starts off actually with Will Smith getting shot while his partner is doing something other than protecting him. So there's a lot of back and forth about who trusts who, and there's friction right out of the gate, which was kind of an interesting dynamic here. Unfortunately, Joel Edgerton's makeup and his mouth stuff and everything makes it hampers his performance a little bit. We don't really care about the character that much because he's not really able to emote under all of the latex and all the other stuff that he's got there. Will Smith does his usual Will Smith stuff. This guy's one of the most charming actors ever to enter the realm of movies, and he is enjoyable in this for sure. I also really like this concept. I like this idea of this mashup between fantasy and reality, or a version of reality. There's some pretty elaborate special effects and some cool fantasy-laden moments in here that I thought were enjoyable. It's certainly, there's eye candy in here, and it's certainly watchable, but I just didn't think it really delivered. It doesn't really deliver a sense of the racial allegory that we're trying to play with here, and it's a little too ham-fisted, and it kind of beans you over the head with its messaging and its connections to a lot of the the concerns that we still have in our society today. I applaud the efforts there, and I think it's cool that Netflix took the chance with this, and I think David Ayer, who does a pretty good job at building this sense of fly on the wall camera work and stuff, and making it almost docudrama like. I really liked End of Watch. It's still probably one of my favorites, if not my favorite David Ayer movie. And this echoes a little bit of the work that he did in there, but it's a little too on the nose and a little too sort of in love with itself, and it doesn't really get a sense and a chance to breathe and take us to new areas. And I thought of Alien Nation the whole time that I was watching this, and I preferred that movie, and I preferred there was a TV show that they made out of it too. It's a great concept. I mean, the fish out of water buddy cop movie, with a violent streak and a streak of realism. These guys are caustic and swearing.
The fuck can you make a shootout awkward?
Interesting concept. Not fully realized. I know everybody has been watching this movie. I think Netflix is very satisfied with the audience retention. Like I say, it's not what I quite wanted it to be, but I did watch the whole thing, and I was entertained a little bit along the way. And I think everybody that tunes into Bright on Netflix is kind of impressed by the sheer amount of special effects and this kind of high concept idea. Netflix has greenlit a sequel to this movie, so we're going to see it again. I don't know if every one of these actors is going to be involved. I didn't hate Bright. It's certainly not trash, but I don't think it lives up to the promise of its concept. It's a good idea, and there are some fine actors in this movie, some fine filmmaking in this movie. It just doesn't all gel together as well as I would like it to. I'm going to give Bright a 6 out of 10. All right, you guys, we're going to play a little Star Wars Battlefront 2, and we are going to dive into some Let's Play and chat. I'm going to just dive into it. You guys kind of know what we've been doing here the last little while. We play different games. You guys ask me questions. Blake's on the mic. Blake, is your mic working?
Not yet.
Not working? We patch a lot of things together in between the edited segments. We're not just sitting back watching the show. We're actually making stuff happen behind the scenes. But right now I'm going to try to shoot down some TIE fighters, and Blake will catch me up because I'm playing a multiplayer game. I'm actually playing on my Xbox One X with my Batwing controller that I custom made. Thank you, Microsoft, for that. That was such a cool thing to be able to do. Nice gift from you guys. And I have been playing this game. Every time I play it, I'm addicted to it. I know there's lots of stuff in this thing that drives people absolutely crazy. The thing with me when I play this game, and frankly most multiplayer games, is I don't have the time super competitive at them, and I'm decent. I work up to get pretty good at these things, but not right now though, because I'm thinking. So I don't worry so much about what other people have that I can't get or I can't unlock, and I'm forgiving of all that stuff. Not that I think that EA should be doing bull crap like they've been doing. I think that they've been learning some very painful lessons that they've needed to learn, and the business has been doing that as well. So hopefully this loot box fiasco turns out to be a good thing, because as we all know, this video game industry is a forever evolving business, and there are mistakes made, but then there's lots of incredible stuff made. And whoa. This is my favorite mode, by the way. This is the Starfighter Assault, which just feels incredible. And actually, I'm playing this on a 1080p TV. And it's an older one, but it still looks pretty good, man. It looks amazing on 4K, though. This is one of the best-looking games of recent days. But if you have questions, if you have comments, if you want to, tell us anything about what we've seen today, or want to, give us some feedback on some of the interviews and some of the stuff that we've been doing recently, or whatever, go ahead. Now's your chance. Spit it out.
Check.
Yep.
I have a question, Vic.
Okay.
And my mic's working.
Hey, Blake has audio.
It's from Paul Anderson.
Okay. Or Adam.
Sorry, Adamson.
Adamson, yeah. an old friend. How you doing, Paul? Good to see you, buddy.
He wants to know if you're going to check out the Secrets of the Empire VR experience at Disneyland.
I will, but I'll wear a hat afterwards, because
It's like a Star Wars thing. We talked about it in the rundown.
I can't wait, actually. And I think my family and I will be headed back to Disneyland in the spring, and I can't. I've gone down there a lot because of work-related things, and so my daughter, and I hate to sound like I'm bragging about anything here or totally spoiling her, but my daughter is the luckiest kid in the world because of that, because she's come on some work trips, and so she's been to Disneyland, I don't know, 6 times or something like that. She's just about to turn 6, so she's very, very fortunate. But when we go back, it will be Daddy getting some great Star Wars time. All right.
Timberwolf wants to know why Overwatch gets to avoid all the loot box controversy.
They were completely cosmetic right from the get-go. They were not about buying stuff. That's a great question, Timberwolf. I guess I don't have to repeat the question now because everybody can hear you, which is incredible. They were not part of that controversy, and it was almost an expected thing on a multiplayer-only game that there was going to be some kind of aftermarket monetization. And Blizzard, I think, has been a pretty upfront company. They learned a lot of hard lessons too with their economies and their sort of built-in storefronts and loot crates and things like that. But they're getting pretty good at it. Although I don't know if that lasts forever. I mean, one of the quick criticisms and I think appropriate criticisms that you could level at Overwatch, as great a game as it is just multiplayer, and they've got this incredible, universe that they've created filled with amazing characters, and it would be great to really deliver something fun for single-player players out there. When you have a fighting game like Injustice 2, that kind of raises the bar for everybody. It's like no one expects there to be that much single-player material in a fighting game, and holy crap is there in that. So now we should expect that with every type of genre, and like now we have stories in sports games. So I feel like Overwatch does so many things perfectly and so well and so fun, but I think people were a little soft on, and probably myself included, on knocking the game for its lack of single-player fun. But it's great. We'll see how the whole industry navigates this touchy subject going forward. Like I say, I think some good will come out of the dark, which I think was Rian Johnson's message about the Last Jedi. Oh, did I just quit? Okay, doesn't matter. We'll play a different mode. Let's see. Any other questions for me? We have 9 minutes, and then after I shut this down, I'm going to jump on and play a little Sea of Thieves, just gaming on a Twitch stream. I'm going to try to hook up with Ben and Jose and see where those guys are at with their pirate ships. Oh, and Mondo Blasto says, Blizz policy has always stated to never be paid to win, ever. I mean, that's the only strategy that you can have, Yeah, it's a stinging lesson to learn, because I don't believe that every idea that was generated around Battlefront 2 was just purely about greed. I think that there's business aspects around this stuff, but when you look at the creativity involved to build us this game, there was a lot of love put into this thing. It's just it's a flash on the thing. Anyways, okay, so let's pop into, let's play the multiplayer Galactic Assault. This is where you get 40 players in there. Everybody's going crazy. Any questions?
Yeah, Jay Avila wants to know what you think of the Xbox Game Pass.
I think it's incredible. I think that we're moving towards the Netflix era for video games. This is what is it, $10 a month, or it's $120 for the year, and now they're going to start adding exclusives, day and date as they drop, first party stuff. Absolutely the right move for Xbox if they're saying, look, play anywhere, and we're going to have some exclusives, and we're going to invest in some of this content. And we've got this hardware that you're going to want to do. They got to kind of get out in front again, and they've got to do these kinds of initiatives. And I think it will sort of push the other guys to think of something similar as well. It's exciting, man. Like this could be a huge catalyst for inverting a lot of the pricing structures around video games that have kept a lot of people away from video games. All of us know how great these experiences are and the value in them, but they're always expensive, and that's always been from the very beginning the first thing that we all complain about. You can find stuff afterwards and on sale and used and all that stuff, but if we move towards subscription-based, all-you-can-eat games, that are like AAA experiences, and it isn't about cost, that's gonna just blow. I mean, that's getting us ready for Ready Player One. I think this idea of just massive audiences playing these incredibly rich, detailed games. So I think it's a very good thing. It does kind of suck that it moves us away from collecting and the physical sort of nature of video games, which is a glorious part of the history. Like, I'll never get rid of the cartridges and game discs that I have, but I think it's inevitable, just like it is with all the other media that we have.
Steely wants to know what your Twitch account is, Vic.
Twitch account is EPN, twitch.tv EPN. I think we may be one of the only 3-letter accounts out there. I don't see that too often. We're not on it too often, mostly because we've done so much edited material, and YouTube is a better collector for that kind of content. So we've kind of built our audience through YouTube mostly. But I understand there's some changes happening with Twitch, and I think our plan is to try to stream to both, because we're streaming a lot more on YouTube. So it makes sense that we kind of relook at Twitch and do more stuff with Twitch. But the reason why we're doing this is because Jose and Ben and I are all going to play on Xbox One. Xbox One does not stream to YouTube, so from the machine. You can go through all kinds of routers like we're doing and stuff right now, but we're just going to go to, I'm going to sit in my game cave and jump in with those guys and sit back and get comfy and figure out Sea of Thieves. But you'll see that on twitch.tv/EPN. I'm terrible at this game when I'm talking.
Feral81 wants to know what your thoughts are on Ready Player One.
Oh, I'm psyched. Yeah, Spielberg is an incredible visionary when he plays in science fiction. Sometimes I feel like he undercuts himself, in a way. Like I loved War of the Worlds, and I loved Minority Report, but there were elements in those movies that kind of made them a little cheesy, or they just sort of undercut their value. But the core of it, the world building, like, I don't know if you guys read up on Minority Report, which is like 15 years old now, but it was so prescient, and the reason why it was so solid and cool and the effects were incredible, especially in the day, is that Spielberg had the luxury to contract 50 futurists and get all kinds of ideas on how the world was going to be at that time.
That was Minority Report.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in.
I thought you said War of the Worlds.
No, that's from Minority Report.
Okay.
But that's the level of detail that he has. So I'm expecting that Ready Player One is going to be in that playing field as well, and that's what I'm most excited for. And I hope it doesn't doesn't get too cheese ball out. You know, like one of the things that I'm a little wary of, and we saw this with Wreck-It Ralph, where they had this you know, camera pan across all these beloved video game characters, but they didn't really use them to their full potential. And as a gamer, you know, watching that movie, I was like, well, they could have done more with that, or they could have had this character. And I'm a bit worried that that's going to be a part of Ready Player One, because there are all of these different studios and IP holders all involved with their own expectations of how their character is going to be represented on the screen. And so I don't know how it's going to correlate with the book. But honestly, like, who do you want making a movie about all of these different, you know, massive properties more than Steven Spielberg? I'm psyched.
Jamie Andrews wants to know if this game is still fun despite the loot boxes.
It's very fun. Yeah, absolutely. I explained it a little bit. I don't know if you just jumped on this stream, but I'm not a hyper competitive player because I play a lot to review stuff, and I can't really stay with a game and you know, figure out all the things. I feel like video games, like, there's a threshold where you're with it too much that you start to hate it, you know, and I find that sometimes with the Assassin's Creed games, where it's, or in Far Cry and stuff in the past, and I love those games, but it's like, oh my God, this like becomes a job after a while, you know, and I feel like that, I see that happening with people that stay with Destiny or stay with this or Call of Duty or whatever. It's enormously fun to a point, and you know, I have a lot of pressures that I have to try to consume this content quickly so I can get, you know, a review video out or whatever. But one of the great joys that I have about all this stuff is that I don't really overstay my welcome with a lot of these titles. And when I play them, I'm just playing them to kind of find the fun of them and feel the emotions of engaging with the software. It's not really about like breaking it or breaking it down or knowing every single kind of corner and nook and cranny of every detail. If I did that, you'd see 3 or 4 videos a year from me, you know, because these games are massive. So, all that being said, yes, I have a lot of fun playing Star Wars Battlefront 2. It's an exquisitely well-made video game with a very heinous wrapping of you know, corporate meddling on top that has poisoned the well, which is unfortunate. And but big lessons are being learned all the way.
Cetros20 has a good question.
Yep.
This person wants to know how often do you update your gaming PC to review the best new games?
Every time I turn it on, I become...
sorry, upgrading, not update.
Oh, upgrading.
I mean, I think it means physically with
physically
new hardware.
upgrading. It's been almost like once every... Oh, there's the alarm. That's the frightening alarm that tells me that it's been 15 minutes. Great question. I will end with that question while I continue to play this match, so I'm not a terrible burden on my team. I probably upgrade every 18 months or so. We had AMD send us out a gaming PC last year, which we used for a lot of our VR stuff, because the previous PC that I still use to play non-VR stuff on, because it's still pretty solid, I've had that for a couple of years. So it is time for me to get my own gaming rig set up, and I'm thinking I might try to figure out a decent laptop. I've heard that gaming laptops have gotten way better. And if I have a gaming laptop, I could probably incorporate it into EP Live and maybe even play VR off of that as well, which would be crazy. So it's time, but I probably do it every 18 months or every 2 years. It's, you know, things start to creak and I start to look around. I find that I'm less inclined to find all the pieces and build it myself. I've done that before. I think that the hardware manufacturers they're getting pretty solid, and Windows 10 is actually pretty decent. So like the last one that I got was an Asus, and it still works fine. It's great little machine, great big machine compared to my consoles. But I do tend to play more on consoles for sure. I just like the ease of access and ease of use, and you know, I'm carrying that Switch in my satchel everywhere I go. But great question. Thank you, guys. I'm going to use that death to opt out, and I apologize to my teammates in Star Wars Battlefront 2. You won't even miss me because I wasn't really contributing much. But that was a lot of fun today, and thanks again to John Ricciardi for joining us. I'm going to try to coerce Ben and Jose to join me tomorrow to talk a little bit about our Sea of Thieves adventure, and that's where I'm headed to now. I'm going to play some on twitch.tv/EPN, so if you want to join me over there in a few minutes, please do. And we will be back tomorrow with a brand new EP live for you. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, we've got tons of video content for you to check out. There will be a brand new classic episode of EP on Saturday. If you dig our stuff, hit subscribe, hit that little bell, and if you're so inclined, that sponsorship button too. Thanks, everybody.